Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing, Magic, and Mysticism. All right, just to kind of give you an update, I did my giveaway that I mentioned from last video, and I contacted the person, so I'm not going to waste time, drawing names out of a hat or anything like that. I actually tried to do a live stream, which is how I was going to conduct that, but apparently YouTube is experimenting with this beta version of a live stream, which is much more complicated than the old one, so it wasn't successful. So I apologize for anybody who tried to tune in when I was trying to navigate that. I'm still working on it, but that's YouTube. So what I wanted to talk to you all today about the subject is literary and movie characters. Who are they really? So as an introduction, I discussed the concept of muses in a previous video. Muses are beings that can inspire us to in any action as a form of creativity. Muses can also represent themselves as characters in fiction stories. Or they can help guide you through some other creative art. I had one that guided me in my book. So they can represent characters in fiction stories. And I know many occultists who, and this is kind of the first thing we're going to talk about, believes that they are pre-existing beings, just like spirit guides, like any other type of demons or angels, and that they come and they influence the thoughts of the writers, whether it be writers of screenplays, which later become movies, or novels, or any other type of fiction, and it's, again, sometimes nonfiction. So they influence the minds of these writers, and as a result of that, the writers create a character. And one of the reasons why this happens is the muse wants themselves as characters to kind of live through the writer, and as something that is in some type of form that's concretized in reality. So, okay, so if there's a muse helps a writer create a particular character, and that becomes a book, then that is concretized and solidified in reality. And as a result of that, the muse and the character live on. So it's about perpetuating itself through life. Now, to kind of give you some examples, because it is kind of abstract what I'm talking about. The first thing that comes to mind is I remember watching, this was when the DVD of Interview with the Vampire with, of course, Anne Rice wrote it, and she was talking about in the DVD the vampire Lestat, which is, one of the big characters in Interview with the Vampire, and how Lestat was her confidant, her companion, her friend, and even her lover. And the way that she talked about it was not just something or character that she wrote in a book, just as something that came to her mind and she just put on paper, but as a very living, breathing force that came and flowed through her, and as a result helped her create the novel. And then, of course, she wrote the vampire Lestat, and he showed up in others of her works, like Queen of the Damned. Now, the next one that comes to mind is, if any of you all are horror fans, you realize that Three from Hell just came out as a movie, which is the third movie from the series Rob Zombie Started with House of a Thousand Corpses, The Devil's Rejects, and now Three from Hell. So one of the characters is Otis Driftwood. He and the character played by Sherry Moon Zombie, were kind of a family that basically, trapped people and kept them as slaves to torture them and, do whatever they wanted with them. And then the Devil's Rejects, they escape from the law and kind of goes on from there. But anyway, not to get too far off into that, you can always watch those movies. Bill Moseley, who played Otis Driftwood, he was doing an interview before Three from Hell came out. And the interviewer asked him a question. He said, it's been 15 years since The Devil's Rejects came out. A lot of time has passed. You've gotten older. Was it hard getting back into such an intense character as Otis Driftwood? And he said, I started out having the same problems that any actor does getting into character. But then Otis showed up. He told me to get out of the way and that he would take over. And that's kind of another example that when you're talking about actors and writers and all of these different types of people that are in creative arts, is that these things become so real to them, and they seem so real to them, that one possibility are they're actually existing beings that kind of work through them. So that's one way to look at literary music characters, through the idea of a muse. The second way, which is also related to the occult, the paranormal, is the idea of thought forms, which I've also written about and have done videos on this channel, specifically through the idea of servitors. So you could be, let's say, a writer, an author who is about to write a book, and then all of a sudden it could be a brain thing, and your brain is coming up with these really creative ideas for a particular character, and all of a sudden you are thinking about it. Okay, what does this character look like? You're dialoguing with your subconscious mind, and it starts to come into play. Start to think about an idea of the personality of the character comes to mind. And, he may be strong and confident, and he looks a certain way. And over time, when the author is thinking about this character and giving it life through the pen or the computer and writing it down and attending to it and giving it its concentration and its focus and its mental energy, coming up with a past, a present, and a future for this character, that through that process it becomes even more real and stronger, and writers can sometimes say that the characters are talking to them. Now, over time, there's a buildup of energy, there is a charge, and there is a creation that is taking place. Now, if you understand, I guess, where I'm going with this end of it, is that this sounds like a thought form. This sounds like a writer who is using the creative part of himself to develop something new and investing energy into it. You can think of it almost as if a character is been developed and has been nourished with the mental energy of the creative writer, that the character can become more powerful and they can have a little bit of consciousness, a little bit of awareness. That's not unheard of. If any of you have created servitors, you know that that sometimes they can develop these particular qualities. And kind of as a result of that, you can think of it almost like these characters as a servitor, an untrained servitor, because what's happening with the writer is that they're trying to get this creative idea in one way, they're feeding it, and the other idea is that you let it kind of reveal to you as the writer what needs to be said, what information needs to be shared. So if you want to think of the thought form as you charging it, you starting the idea off, and then it develops into something that is self-perpetuating in its creativity. That's not a far off it's not a far off possibility that it is a servitor type creature, although not in the traditional sense of servitor, because you're not giving it, you're not tasking it, and you're not going through the same procedures, but it is in the sense kind of a servitor because we're dealing with thought forms which is powered by your mental energy. So if any of you are particularly psychically sensitive, can sense energy, this would be a good thing to notice, to discern. If you've ever come across a muse, if you ever come across possibly a servitor, is there a difference? How do you sense it? How do you experience it? I've given kind of two descriptions of what they might be. And I will, if I were to be forced into a corner and give my vote, I would say in most cases that the muses are actual beings that exist apart from my own personal creativity and consciousness of what I'm exhibiting in the moment. But I'd love to hear about your experiences or what you think. Please subscribe and like, and I will see you in a future video.